Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another Tuesday DaaS Sales Workshop session. We'll get into things here in 1 minute. Let me just make sure we have everybody in the waiting room. Great. Okay, that looks to be everybody from now. And as usual, we'll leave that open and we'll keep this kind of interactive as well. So obviously, there will be times for Q&A and some feedback and input from you guys, as I always like to incorporate in my workshops. But just to really kick it off, each week we usually go through some type of a different lesson or, a specific aspect of the workshop. And when I go back and look through all these workshops that I've been running for, the last year plus in this particular format, what I see get asked about the most and what we have to reiterate and keep bringing to people's attention. Sometimes it's, clients over and over again, and sometimes there's always an influx of new people coming in as well. So it's good to kind of revisit these. But basically the four things I keep seeing over and over again in terms of questions and things that I end up teaching lessons on is revolving, especially the sales side of things, guys, is revolving how to pitch it, how to package it, meaning what am I actually offering? I still see some confusion with that. How do I price it? Which, as we should know, I said that separate from pitch for a very specific reason. The pitch and the pricing are totally separate things. And when I sell, and if you've seen my framework and the script that I give you guys, we don't talk about price until after the pitch and then the temp check, and then we get into price. So I just wanted to kind of point that out, that I listed those separately for a very specific reason. And then the last one is a little more general than, say, pitch, price, or package. It's more about just how do I discuss this with my market? How do I actually gauge the interest? And not even gauge, how do I increase the interest and actually, make people kind of jaws drop right on the other side because I'm explaining what I have to offer. And I think those are kind of the most common things. So I'm going to go over some of those in general standpoints and in some in more depth. And depending on the questions and how much people want me to dive into that. But I just really want to kind of recover all those in one session in kind of bullet points. Usually when I cover these things, they're either kind of just a question that came up and I might answer it specific to that, or it's kind of just dedicated to one of those, right? How to customize the pitch or how to package it and offer it. So I don't know if I've ever kind of jammed this all into one workshop, and that's kind of what I'm going to do here today. Now, if there are any people that haven't attended any of my prior workshops, my area of expertise in the company is more on the sales side of things. I would say more everything on the front end, from the sales and the marketing and the messaging and the copy, everything to do with until we take their credit card. And not to say I don't still work in the company after that, but my area of expertise and what I'm teaching here is how to get people to raise their hand, how to get on calls with them, and then once we're on calls, how to navigate the discussion so we can close deals. Being that it's a fit, obviously, right? I'm not just saying close deals to close deals with people we can actually help and deliver results. So in saying that, I always kind of emphasize for the newer people on here, I'm not going to be diving into the platform and showing how to build audiences or the tech side of things. That's more on the office hours workshops and some of the other workshops throughout the week. Specifically, you're going to see more and more about kind of going in platform and saying how to best utilize the data, but that's not what I do in my area of expertise. All the resources that I share with you guys and all the lessons are usually geared around sales, marketing, and messaging. Matter of fact, I'm not sure if I see him on here. I'll have to go double check who my DMs are with. I don't see the name here. There was somebody that submitted some messaging that they're working on for a campaign, and I was asking if they could hop on today's workshop. I'd love to go over it in real time. I think it'd be beneficial for everybody. But if he's not on here, I definitely want to go over it for him before I do it in front of a crowd of people. So I'll double check that beforehand. But let me just start before I dive into those four things that I kind of said I'm going to discuss on today's workshop, and just go through and drop you guys the resources that I give out at the beginning of this every week. Just because, again, there's always new people coming in and always new people enrolling. And the other thing I'm starting to do more and more regularly, and I would like to keep doing on the workshop, just because some of the feedback and some of you guys have asked to see more of this. I'd like to dive a little more into some of our current results and what we're seeing. And I usually screen share, and some of you guys are familiar with me sharing that. Some of you guys have asked me to do it more often, so I'm happy to start doing that as well. But the first thing, I'm going to grab the link and I'm going to go throw it here in the chat and then run through what this document is really quickly. So right there in the chat. this Google document that you're going to see the link for right now. Sorry, somebody else just came in the waiting room. And I think the way the chat works in here is if somebody isn't in the room and I post a link, they can't see it. So I'll end up dropping it again. If anybody is just coming in and didn't get the link, I will put it there again momentarily. But the link in the chat right now, guys, is just for this document that I give out to all of our clients, specifically for our DaaS clients. Not that this isn't helpful for incubator clients. I'm not saying that whatsoever. The big difference, as I always point out, is the amount of data you have. In the incubator, maybe you have enough data to sell it to one client, or maybe you're just testing it out for yourself. So most people in incubator aren't building out the full DaaS sales process quite yet, which again, this can certainly be helpful, but it's usually not priority number one or at the top of anybody's list if they're an incubator. If it is, feel free to use it and have at it 100%. But this is just all the best resources I give you guys to build out your exact DaaS sales process. As you know, I'm a co-owner here. I built our sales team. I was the first rep on our team closing deals, myself and Jesse, initially, until Mark came on board and Adrian. And then, we have a team of full-time reps that I now just kind of oversee and manage, outside of a couple of weeks per quarter where I clear out my calendar and I hop back in and take sales calls. But again, this document, if anyone has had their one-on-one THO call with me, that's again only for our DaaS clients. You would have also received this link to this document in the email I send you shortly after that one-on-one call, same day that we speak. But again, number one is a Google Doc going over the exact sales process that I built out to build this company and that I recommend you guys build out. Number two is a tutorial where I go in a little more depth and go over that document and kind of screen share and show you what some of that looks like rather than just having it be on a document, right? Number three, as you guys know, in contingent with showing you some of the results that I just talked about and I'm going to go into in a minute, what leads to results is our marketing. So I'm always also sharing that with you guys, right? The current ads we're running, the email, the creative. Actually, we just launched a couple new campaigns within the last few days. So I will be updating these ad campaigns probably before the week's end, and a couple will be swapped out and some new ones will be going in. I'm always doing that. But again, some of our best performing ads, current ads we're running, best email campaigns, creative, and the copy we use in short form LinkedIn and B2B outreach is all in this document. Number 4 and 5 on my screen are the exact scripts or frameworks I've already built out for your sales process. So I recommend a 2-call process. Call number 1 is number 4 on my screen. Call number 2, your actual sales or demo call. The script or framework for that is number 5 on my screen. Number 6, again, is a copy of the pitch deck that we give to you guys. Nothing here is branded to Audience Labs, so make a copy, swap out the first slide with your own branding or what have you, and then just a short little, 15-slide pitch deck or so showing how in-market audience will work for them and how we build them, how we would loop that into their marketing or their media buying campaigns, how we would do identity resolution. We give you guys, a half dozen or a dozen different case studies of ours to leverage as you start to build out your own. Number 7 is a tutorial just a little more dedicated to the identity resolution tool, the SuperPixel. And again, within the description of that video, guys, that's where you find the link if you don't already have it for what's called our Pixel Forecast Calculator. So by entering about 3 or 4 metrics right at the top of the forecast module, as you'll see, I go through it in that video, show you exactly how to work it. We can get a very good guesstimate of how much revenue that client or business is leaving on the table by not using an identity resolution tool. So usually it's a really good tool to kind of figure out if somebody is a good fit based on the amount of traffic they get per month, based on the average order value of their service, based on their current estimated cost per acquisition. I know not all of our clients know that to the T, but we can at least get a guesstimate, and then just need to really know what the current website converts at. So if I know those 4 metrics, I think you could even get away with 3 of them, but it's much more accurate if you have all 4. If we can plug in those 4 things, we can get a good rough guess of how much revenue they're leaving on the table by not using that tool. And then the last one, when you click on that document and drop it down, again, 15 or 20 of my sales call recordings. I know it's helped certain people, pick up some of my verbiage and terminology and maybe my relational ability on calls. So listen to some of my recordings and pick up whatever you could take out of there and, implement into your own style or approach. So again, for anybody that hopped on late and didn't get it initially, I will go drop that link in the chat here really quickly. One more time. And cool, just got it there. So the last comment, which is the link to a Google Doc, that's the one that's on my screen here. Now, in terms of, again, sharing a little bit about, what we do internally, This is my last day end because today's the 22nd. So 21st is the last day's end report for, our sales team. And again, I point this out at the top. The channel in here in our company Slack is closed deals cash collected. This is all new cash collected, means this is just from our marketing efforts. Again, I've told you guys before, we use 4 channels of marketing. We use paid advertising, cold email, mutually beneficial partnerships, MBPs, and we use organic outreach through content as well as through appointment or DM setters. But I kind of lump that all into, organic outreach. So through our marketing efforts, this channel is only tracking the new revenue that comes in from new appointments booked into our sales team's calendar, none of our existing clients or the existing revenue on the platform. And you can see through 21 days in July, we have about, just under 90,000 cash collected there. And just under 80,000 in MRR. So as I always say to people, the difference is 89,700 and change was already collected and billed through this month. Another 79,700 and change is already on the books for August and September and beyond. So some of that comes from, there's usually more in the cash collected because a lot of us have setup fees, or there's one time, like one-offs that somebody can just purchase something from us that's not recurring, and certain things like that. So our monthly cash collected is usually about 10% higher in total than our MRR, pretty much across the board. That can fluctuate to 12%, 8%, but it's usually somewhere in that. And this is a pretty good model of that, right? Yeah, that's pretty much right within 10% of the revenue. So anyway, and then again, how we do that and seeing a little bit of our call booking channels, although this doesn't track everything, we really just track the ads and then our warm email. So this isn't tracking like our cold email and our outbound organic stuff. That's tracked in a different software because our organic team, we just operate out of a different software for that. But again, you can see from our paid ads, 12 booked that day. And then when it says the reactivation workshop nurture sequence, that's people who have already opted into something, whether it's in our free school community and they've attended workshops and joined our list, whether they attended one of our past, clicked on an ad, signed up for an appointment, booked, and no showed. They might be in our workshop or our nurture sequence. So that could be a few different things, but that just means warm people that have opted in and already given us their information and clicked on or attended something that we've run. So you can see on the 19th, with those two metrics together, we booked about 15 appointments. Ad spend that day, we spent about 2,500 that day. Now, the appointment cost, again, only takes into account what we do in ads. So anything we can book via email in a warm nurture sequence or reactivation sequence, that kind of offsets that cost. Now, 15 divided by 2,500 would be a little under $200 per cost, right? It'd be closer to 181 if my math is right. That's getting just off the top of my head, but it'd be right in that ballpark. But either way, that metric is actually a little high. We like our numbers, and our KPI to be somewhere in a $50 range between about $90 and $140 per appointment. I think I showed something, it was either last week or the week before, where we had like a great day. We booked a ton, we spent a ton. I want to say it was like either $68 or $86 per appointment, and we booked in like 20 something with that campaign. Again, you can see our monthly total as of the 19th. And again, for some reason, this channel doesn't total them up every day. It totals them up every couple of days. It's weird. So this was the last day I could find a report in here. We're probably, closer to 35 or 37,000 or whatever in ad spend. But again, shows you kind of what we're spending per month. You see, as of 2 days ago, 31,000, and on the back end, we brought in about 90,000 in new revenue in relation to that. So that's all done through the same stuff that I share with you in that document, I just went over in terms of, the current ads, email, messaging, creative copy. I mean, of course, we have updated campaigns and really nurture or reactivation emails are pretty self-explanatory. There's nothing like flashy about that. Hey, you attended a recent workshop, yada, yada, yada. If you thought you got some value and you could also resell this to your network, book a call with our team. We'll show you how and how you can make an ROI in under 60 days or whatever, right? I mean, those are all very basic. Somebody attends something, you just, lead with a promise, build a little proof behind that promise of how we do that and ask them if they're interested and they want to see said result. If so, attend this, yada, yada, yada. So those are pretty self-explanatory. And we should all be running those to warm audiences, people that book and don't show up, people that attend free events, people that opt into free groups and maybe raise their hand saying, yes, I want to fast track my path to success, whatever that looks like, right? I just use that because that's pretty general, whether you're doing a fitness offer or or a business offer or a mindset offer, whatever's the fastest path to get to the desired result. Usually people are interested in that, right? So next, I'm going to go into kind of the other topics I had talked about a little when it talks about pitch, packaging, pricing, and discussing. I'm just going to go check the chat real quick and see if I missed anything. No, nothing there. So if anybody has any questions, either they'd like to ask now, like to save them for later, either or, just go type a 1 in the chat and I will call on you. I could get into some now if anybody has any questions about anything I covered before I go into the next section, or I can just wait and address them all at the end. I'll just give it a second to see if we have anybody typing anything in the chat. And if not, I'll just go into some of the next segments. Okay, nothing yet. I can keep talking, trust me. And I will. But so yeah, if you guys have questions again as I go, or you want to get called on toward the end when I open it up again for a Q&A, again, just type a 1 in the chat. That way I don't just say speak and everybody's speaking at the same time. Goal of this call, I kind of covered that at the top and maybe you hopped in late. Goal of this call each week is to bring you guys sales lessons and trainings and best practices for, again, how to kind of pitch, package, and price and discuss this data as a service. So most of the people that hop on this call are in our DaaS tier program. Some may be in the incubator, but most people, regardless, have the goal, whether it's initially or down the road, to take this data and resell it to clients, whether that be existing clients, whether that be a cold audience. And I just go through some of the different best practices on how to do that primarily, Simon. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, perfect. So what I'm going to kind of dive into now is all those aspects I talked about. And first, I think it's most important to kind of understand how to discuss this. So for instance, if I'm speaking to a prospect, and I'm just going to read somebody's name on the screen just to make it interactive, don't feel like you have to unmute or interact. I'm just going to feel like I'm interacting with a prospect, and I'm going to kind of go into a role play here. But I'll just talk about this as if I was, somebody just asked me, they just hop on a call with me and say, hey, Ray, what does your data platform do? Well, Simon, we have a super graph internally where we're tracking over 280 million users, up to 1.9 trillion behaviors, and up to 60 billion URLs daily. What we have the ability to do is go into that super graph and build you an in-market pre-existing winning audience, much more detailed than any Google or Meta platform can do. And then we take that winning audience and loop it right into your marketing and advertising campaigns for better results, lower cost per lead, and lower cost per acquisition. Would you like to hear more about how that works, Simon? Would that benefit your business if I could show you how to lower your cost per lead and acquisition? Yeah, it would kind of benefit my business, right? Yeah, tell me more about how it works. Totally, man. So right now, when you are going in an advertising, Simon, let's say you're going into Facebook and running ads. You have 2 options for targeting, right? Number 1, you can tick the box that says, let Facebook find my ideal audience. I'll go back to that in a moment. Number 2, you can use Facebook's in-platform native targeting, right? Which now only gives you about 5. Last time I was in there running a campaign in the Facebook targeting, native targeting platform, I could only choose from 5 different things. What I mean by that, Simon, is we can't necessarily go in and target by age, race, income, gender, all the things we used to be able to do on Facebook. We have to get very, very vague and generic with our targeting. So that's one option. And because most people see they only have 5 options, they're like, I don't want to pick from there. That's not enough. I'm going to tick the box that says, let Facebook find my ideal audience. Now, what happens when you do that, Simon, is you may not know this as a business owner, but a certain percentage of your budget is going into a testing phase, especially with new ad sets and new campaigns. And what that means is Facebook is taking some of your advertising budget, putting it in front of multiple audiences to try to find and get your best audience. What happens in that testing phase is, number 1, not all your money's going right into advertising. Some is going into testing. And number 2, you're going to get lower quality and quantity those first 30, 60, 90 days, however long it takes Facebook to run through their testing phase and dial in your audience. So that's how you're currently targeting, right? Or you could go in my platform. I could build you an intent, pre-existing in-market first-party winning audience. And how I do that, Simon, is I layer it threefold. Number 1, by people in market, meaning people affiliated with your niche or industry, people searching for those services. And more specifically, that's where we get into the intent-based. So I can take the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 keywords that people are searching when they're looking for your product or service. So now I have this big in-market audience. Now I can segment that down to only the people that are actually searching for my keywords. And then lastly, where you can only layer it by about 5 parameters in Facebook, as we talked about, I can layer that by in excess of almost 200 parameters, meaning I can get you their name, email, phone number, VIN number of the vehicle they're driving, what credit score they have, whether they're male, female, gender, race, income, everything you could think about under the sun. I can segment and filter that on my platform for a much more granular targeted audience. So that all being said, Simon, if you're going to run more Facebook ads, what's a better way to do their targeting? What you have been doing or what I just mentioned to you? Right? So do you guys kind of see what I did there? That's my whole conversation I would start to have about in-market audiences. I didn't go too in depth about how many people I could get them, how big this list would be, how I source the data, compliance, legal, like all the questions I get. I think a lot of you guys, and not to say you won't get them, they're valid questions and we can always answer any of them. I'm not downplaying them, but I hear a lot of people say that's coming up early in sales conversations and it just never does for me. So it almost feels like maybe you guys are asking questions or maybe you guys are somewhat saying something to lead them to bringing it up, because if you keep the conversation around that stuff, yeah, you might go a little deeper and they might ask, where's the data sourced? Well, the data is sourced from a super graph with the 11 biggest data sources all being funneled into our super graph. And then our backend algorithm and coders and developing team segment and sort all that data and aggregate it in the right buckets. So then we can give you nice, clean, historically accurate data. Right? It's not that hard to explain that stuff either. I get it if we don't know it, and I'm a co-owner, it's definitely easy for me to explain. But I don't think I've heard people say they get hung up on like where the data comes from and its legality. The data in the platform's 100% legal. Guys, if your little DaaS agency got shut down, and I'm not downplaying anybody's, don't take that in a negative way, but that means if our super graph wasn't legal, our whole company would be shut down. It wouldn't just be your DaaS agency, it would be our whole company. It would be 1,000 other agencies that are using our products and services. The data is 100% legal. I think where it gets into some conversations with the clients, I think it's very good to know how to navigate this part of the conversation as well, is where it really comes into legal is how compliant it is when we do the outreach. Now, the data is solid. The data is clean. It's accurate. It's solid if we build our audiences right. Now, are we in compliance with how we use it? And is that in the best fit to get the client ROI? I think that's where a lot of discussions get a little gray, for lack of a better phrase, especially on sales calls. So I'll run through how to talk about that a little and build the proper expectations. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to lump that all in because I know when I get into those part of the conversations, very rarely where I just left off saying, hey, Simon, what's a better way of targeting going forward? Does he go, is that data legal and compliant? Like, that's not where the conversation is going to go from there. He's going to go, he's like, well, your way, obviously. And then he might say, well, what are the anticipated? You said I should see a drop in cost per lead and acquisition. Well, yeah, just by switching to a much more targeted audience and using in-market intent-driven first-party data, usually our businesses see a drop in cost per lead and acquisition from somewhere between 25 and 40% within the first 72 hours of injecting these audiences. So let me ask you again, Simon, if your cost per lead and acquisition dropped by, let's say low number, 25%, would that ultimately make your ads more profitable? Well, yeah, Ray, it would. All right. And didn't when you hop on this call, you said getting more profitability out of your ads was one of your prime concerns? Yeah. So now that I just showed you a way to do that, is there anything that'll stop us moving forward if I show you exactly how this works and it makes sense? So even as I'm going through the call and he's saying yes to all of my, if I did this, would it do this? Or would it help your business? Those are all little tie downs that I then use where he is saying, if I had your product, I could get this result. I'm not saying it. He's saying it. I just say, hey, does that sound right? Yeah, it sounds right. Cool. Just want to make sure we're on the same page, but I want him to say it. That's one of my mottos. If you guys have been following me around much of my sales training, one of my biggest mottos is telling isn't selling. Anything I want to say, hey, Simon, you need my product. I need to figure out how to phrase it for Simon to say, yes, Ray, I need your product, because anything that comes out of my mouth comes with skepticism. I'm a sales guy. If it comes out of his mouth, he's going to believe it, right? So yeah, that is in the script and the docs I mentioned. Yes, 100%. Yep, it is. So again, navigating that conversation, and that's the most prevalent thing. So I would say discussing this, and again, those 4 topics I talked about, correlates closely with then how do I package this? Because people are always like, well, I know I can do this, this, and this, and I have access to these different features, but what is my actual offer and how do I put that together? I always say it's usually a combination of the in-market audiences and or the SuperPixel. And you can usually figure out to lead with which one based on getting a better understanding of that client when you're kind of in the discovery phase of a sales call. For instance, if I'm speaking with a client that tells me he's got kind of a higher end e-commerce product and they're driving 50,000 people plus to the website, I'm going to lead with the SuperPixel before I start talking about in-market audiences. That's going to be a cross-seller and upsell later, but that's where I'm going to get the best result. But if I'm talking to a business owner that's spending 3, 4, 5K a month in ad spend, hopefully more, but even at that, but they're not driving a lot of traffic, or they're a low traffic business, say high ticket coaches, for instance, even some of the better ones are only driving about 1,000 people to their website. So that's not necessarily a home run with the SuperPixel, but if he's spending a few grand on ads and I can drop his cost per acquisition and increase his profitability, that's going to be more of kind of a quick jolt into his business in terms of a quick win. So I'm kind of always thinking, guys, when I'm on a sales call with a company, a business, a brand who wants to use this data directly for their advertising and marketing, where's the shortest time to a quick win that's going to actually boost some confidence and they're going to see a positive result? And then once I deliver that positive result, hey, Simon, now that we got you this result from installing the pixel on your page, resolving those bounce visitors and retargeting, we drove an extra 75K in revenue. I recommend taking 10% of that revenue, investing them back into paid ads and my data platform, and start running some ads to an audience that's not already hitting your website. Let's keep driving more traffic there and let that pixel keep picking them up, retargeting the people who don't buy the first time, and keep driving a higher quality cold audience, right? So now I can go sell some in-market audiences, and he's going to be like, number one, that makes total sense. Number two, I probably built up a lot more trust because I've already delivered on my first promise and he's seen a result. And now I just tell him a result that will kind of piggyback off that first one and lead to a better end result. So I always like to kind of lead with one, get a result, and then cross-sell, upsell, however you want to word it, a second or a third deliverable at that point. There are certain cases where a client is kind of set up for both. They're running good ads and they're driving good traffic. I'm going to pitch both. I'm going to pitch some in-market audiences and and the SuperPixel, and they work very well in conjunction, but only if the business owner has kind of the prerequisite foundations for that, right? If they're not spending a ton on traffic, in-market audiences may or may not do a lot in their ad campaigns. Now, if you're using them and you're using them in ad campaigns, email blasts, and SMS, cool, that might still work and that might still be a great option. We can talk about that some more if people have questions on that. But I'm just saying, generally speaking, I want to sign up audience clients, people buying lists for me that are running ads. That's where it's going to perform best, and I'm going to show the quickest wins. Again, generally speaking, there are outliers where I'm going to see better results in an email campaign for a certain brand, or even in a cold calling or a call center for a certain brand, but those aren't what I recommend. And I always advise my clients the same. When I speak with a business owner, just selling the data to him, I'm like, hey, Simon, the data is going to perform best like this: best in paid ads, second best in email, third best in SMS, fourth best cold calling it in terms of an ROI, right? And they might ask why, that I could go in depth about that. And that kind of has to do with something I was talking about earlier in the compliance thing, right? So again, when we do get that question, I always like to say the data is 100% legal. I can show you our legal disclaimers, no problem. But what you're really asking about, Mr. Business Owner, is what's legal for you. And that compliance comes with the outreach, right? So we can either recommend best practices. Again, I'm speaking as if I'm you guys as a DaaS agency. What I would say if I'm a low fulfillment model and I'm not a full stack agency running their campaigns is we can recommend best practices, and I'll shoot you a tutorial of exactly how I would embed the data for highest compliance, right? And we'll walk you through the process. Now, if I'm a full stack agency, I'm going to say, hey, we handled that done for you. We are 100% a compliant agency, and we know we're 100% within compliance standards. So we actually relieve you of that responsibility and put it all on us. You want us to run your remarketing campaigns for you, and you probably recommend that. But it's very easy to be compliant with the data in case anyone isn't sure. Within ads, the data is almost 100% compliant. I say almost because we all know there's certain special categories where you have to run through the data a little different than you would normally build a list. And I'm talking the adult industry, certain cannabis and products, certain products that are anything for ages 18 or 21 or older. Just anything in those categories can be a little just situational, really. There's no other way to put it. Each one of those I would even attack different. So I'm going to kind of use those as outliers. Let's just say we're dealing with a regular industry that's not one of those adult or, legal products or anything like that. Within that, if I'm looping the data into ads, it's always going to be 100% compliant. And the reason it's going to get the best result is there's no compliant restrictions, and I can get it in front of the most people and the highest quality audience the fastest. I cannot get my copy and my ad. I'm sorry, I cannot get my message and my branding and my marketing and everything I want in front of an audience as quick as I can with ads. I could put money behind it and get it in front of a bigger audience at a much more compelling platform. So ads, as we all know, convert and are more compelling than email, right? That's one of the reasons they cost money, and email is relatively free, depending on what you have for autoresponders and softwares, et cetera. But again, it's going to be compliant ads, and I can get it behind the biggest, most targeted audience the fastest. That's why it's going to perform best. It's going to perform second best in email, because email is pretty easy compliance standards when we have first-party data. What are the compliance standards for email? You guys should all know this. It's pretty basic, but I'll list them. There's outside of the body or the subject of your email, which is a given. There's 4 compliance standards with our data. Must have your name, your business address, and a clear opt-out. So as long as you have that, plus the body and the subject of your email, you're 100% compliant with any data you're pulling off of our database. Within SMS, you actually only need 3 of those 4 things. But as you know, SMS could be a little trickier when you're going out of like CRMs and stuff like that. You might need certain integrations or compliance standards within the CRM. So I'm going to kind of say that separate, but the actual SMS requirements compliance-wise with first-party data are you need your name, your business name, and a clear opt-out. The only difference, you don't need your business address in the SMS. With cold calling, it can become more and more, again, circumstantial or situational to different states and different industries. I only really recommend business owners use the data in a cold calling capacity when that is their current infrastructure and they're already set up for it. They know how to be compliant. They should be taking the data and running it through a DNC list one more time just to make sure, even after it's been scrubbed through audience labs, filters, and such. So I don't recommend cold calling the data, again, unless that's their current infrastructure and that's how they're doing business. Then I feel pretty good that they're going to be compliant with it. But there is more and more restrictions, and I would look into that specifically for cold calling in your particular state, niche, and or industry, because it can change. There's no general thing I can say that's going to be 100% compliant across all those areas. So I'm not going to dive too much into that. Door-to-door sales, yeah, I've actually heard some pretty good luck with that. Again, I really think that is really contingent on your initial opener. So when you have a solid opener that kind of has them drop their guard, if you went up to them and knocked on their door and said, "Hey, I got your address out of a database on this website. I'm just seeing if you're interested in my stuff," you're going to get the door slammed in your face most likely, and people calling the cops on you for all I know. But it does work really well. Again, you just want to make sure you have people that know what they're doing. They're very personable, and they really have a script or a good opener that's going to disarm the citizen. What works usually best in the service-based industry, what I've seen them, is the one that they would do whether they got the data from us or not. Hey, we're in the area doing some work down the street at Bobby's, at Susie's house. We'd love you to drive by and check out our work. Please keep us in mind if you're having anything done or you know any other neighbors, right? So just something welcoming, inviting. Hey, if you're looking for something or you know somebody in the market, send them our way. We're doing some work in the area. Feel free to go check it out, right? It's like you're never going to get in any trouble for that. And the data's performed very, very well. Yeah, no, 100%. You have to pull it, I think, a little different way to make sure you're getting the right data when you're trying to do like direct mail or door knocking. But it can definitely be done. Again, that's not my area of expertise. Jaden on office hours is really good at kind of walking through that process if you need help with that. But no, it certainly works that way. I just think out of the ones I was mentioning, that one is kind of done on a lower scale. Not to say it doesn't work. And of course, that has obviously geographical and local restrictions, right? So a lot of us are going to regional or national brands. So those people probably wouldn't be door knocking, or unless they have huge crews, but it's just becoming less and less common, and people are going to more digital outreach. But yeah, can certainly work. When emailing clients with the data, do we need to use business emails versus personal to stay compliant, or does that not? So yeah, Rohit actually answered it as good or as shorter than I would have, but just as good. So yeah, that's 100% correct. And he can actually, if you have any more questions, since he's on here, he knows that system a little better than I by now, I think already. So he could even go in more depth if needed, but that's exactly correct. that's kind of where we talk about the B to B to C angle. But yeah, I think that's a really good point. Great question. So now I've talked a little about how to discuss it, right? How to discuss about in-market audiences, how to discuss the difference between targeting the old way versus the new way. And the guys, that's kind of how I always position it. Like when I break it out, I just show them, hey, this is kind of what you're currently doing, Simon, or you're doing one of these two things because everybody is, or you're using in-market first-party data. Well, Ray, I don't even know what a data platform. No, I'm not using that. Cool. So you're doing one of these two things. Well, let me show you this way and why it's better. And then I just walk him through the process. And hey, so when you continue to run your ads going forward, what's a better way for you to target, Simon? What you were doing or the way I just showed you? And then I just sit back and shut up. And it's very hard for someone to say, well, Ray, the old way I was doing it, that's crappier and more expensive. That's the better way, right? It's really hard for somebody to say that. So all you have to do is show them the difference, and show them. I always call it kind of, people call it new way versus old way. I just say the usual way versus what you didn't know existed and what your competition is doing. And that's another great talking point. When I'm on the call or the phone with a specific business or company, I like to do a little prep before I get on any call, right? And know about their business. And what I love to look up is category kings, right? So an easy one, guys, if I'm speaking to anybody in the retail niche, I could say Walmart or Target, right? Or something. But even in the roofing space, I would look up, if I'm in Texas, who's done the most roofs and the most revenue for any roofing company in Texas. And I would say to a business owner, hey, Simon, what if I could get you access to the same data that Walmart and Target are using? Because although we can agree you're never going to have the same ad budget as those guys, those juggernauts, but what if we could have access to the same data so we could acquire a client for the same cost as those? Then you could actually be more competitive. Would that help your business? Right. So I showed them because, guys, in the past, and believe me, Walmart's and McDonald's and all those juggernauts are using this data. I can guarantee you 100%. They've been using it for years. And that's what we have the ability now, is we have the ability to bring what a lot of people think is unattainable and only for those Fortune 500 or 1,000 companies, this high level data. We can bring it to the small and mid-sized businesses and let them actually compete with their category kings on cost per acquisition. Because as anybody that knows a lot about business knows, whoever can spend the most to acquire a customer will win, number one. But number two, the big people, the big companies, the juggernauts, the category kings, generally speaking, have about half of the acquisition cost of the mom and pops because of the data they're using. So if they are spending, for a mom and pop client is spending double of a juggernaut to acquire a client who has a way bigger budget, they're just getting stomped on little by little until eventually the juggernaut takes over, the whole place and puts the mom and pop out of business. So most small to mid-sized businesses are spending about 2x of their category king competitor to acquire a client, which is almost makes it impossible to ever catch up. It probably does make it impossible. I don't think anybody ever catches up. They're never going to catch up with the budget of a Walmart or a Target or the biggest roofing company or the biggest e-com company. I mean, you can name any one, and when you're speaking to a small, mid-sized business. But now, Simon, I could give you the same data they have access to. So now you have that competitive edge in your ad campaigns. The other big benefit I've seen is we'll speak to a lot of business owners and advertisers that are like, well, to offset ad costs, we're constantly pumping out new creative, which is great, but generally it's not always ad fatigue. It's because they're not targeting a good enough audience. My point being, I can build you great in-market, pre-existing, winning targeted audience, loop them right into your current creative without having to create new creative, and you're already going to see an improvement. Never mind, let's go back and run some of these audiences to your old best performing creative that already fatigued out with those audiences. So number one, they don't have to swap out creative as often as they think. Number two, we can usually get some quick wins off past successful campaigns that fatigued with the audiences they were using, but we can inject ours into there. So all kinds of little ways that we can speak about this. Again, I've just shown you a few different angles you can use. Personally, the way I look at that is the way my conversation is going with that prospect. Which one of those one or two things I just talked about is going to be most relevant for that guy? And that's what I'm going to bring up. Is he talking about already trying to compete with the category king? Then I might go that route. Is he really focusing on cost per lead and acquisition and ad profitability? I'm going to gear it more toward that. But again, just by having a little bit of a discussion, we can usually kind of figure out where to steer the conversation, for lack of a better phrase. So Again, some great verbiage and different angles and different avenues of the conversations I've seen and how to discuss it, how to talk about the packaging. Now, again, I went more into the in-market audiences, but if I had that same conversation and I was leading with the SuperPixel, the conversation wouldn't be too much different. Obviously, the verbiage and the way I go about it, but it's still just leading with value and showing. I would actually recommend bringing up our pixel forecast calculator if I'm going to have that conversation. And I would just say, hey, Simon, just to make sure this is a good fit and let's get a rough guess of how much revenue this might generate for your business. But basically, what I need to know is how many hits you get to your website, the average order value of your product or service, what your current acquisition cost is, and the current conversion rate of your website. So if you can get me those metrics for that call that we have, or whatever, if I'm on a call, maybe I'm setting another one. But if there's ways we can also set this in advance, right? We can send an email before, hey, if you could have these metrics, that would really give us a boost for our call or whatever. Sometimes we may have to set a second one. Sometimes people can give them to you in real time, but I can just then show them. So let's say he's on the call and he has those numbers. Great. I plug in the 50,000 hits, the average order value of $347, your current acquisition cost of $117, and your website's converting at 1.8%. Plug all that in, and hey, man, looks like you're leaving about $67,000 in revenue on the table by not using our identity resolution tool. So let me tell you exactly how this would work, Simon. This is just one piece of code I would slap onto the existing header of that website and or landing page that we're driving that traffic to. And what it's going to do, it's going to start firing almost immediately, and it's going to resolve the identity of your bounce visitors. So as we've talked about, Simon, if somebody visits your website, but they don't opt in, there's no way for you to know who they are or anything about them, right? Their name, email, phone number. Well, no, Ray. I mean, if they don't opt in, I don't know who the hell's visiting my page. Totally. And that's kind of the old way of doing business. And this is where my tool comes in. So my identity resolution tool will resolve their identity. It'll give us their first and last name, their SMS number, their primary email address, and their hash profile, which means their advertising profile, if we want to retarget them in Meta, Google Ads, what have you. So we're going to resolve the identity of those people and then hit them with very direct retargeting ads, saying something like, hey, Simon, we saw you visited our XYZ ecom website here in the last 30 days or so. We're sorry you see you didn't opt in for our newsletter or make a purchase. Hey, we have this one-time discount for our loyal website visitors. Since we know you were on our site shopping around, 25% off your entire first purchase if you check out within the next 24 hours. Boom. Retargeting campaigns, something like that. I could come up with one for any niche or industry, but that was just kind of off the cuff and off the top of my head. So basically, the way my tool works, Simon, is once I install that on your website, it's going to start firing. It's going to resolve anywhere from about 30 to 60%. But let's say on the low end, it's even 30%. You said your website traffic was about 5,000 or 50,000 per month. That means we're going to resolve about 15,000 people that visited your website. Then we hit them with very direct retargeting ads and emails. I can almost guarantee you the opt-in rate to that is going to be at least double the conversion rate of the cold traffic to your website. But even if it operated, let's say it operated worst case scenario, and guys, I'm going to pull out my calculator now so I get the math right. But let's say worst case scenario that my retargeted warm traffic from the resolved identities of your website only converts at the same as your current website traffic. So we said we would resolve approximately 15,000 people, right? 30% or so. And then even times your 1.8%, that would drive in an extra 270 clients per month. Again, even bare minimum, my Pixel operates at the worst performance, only 30%. It might resolve closer to 60%. People only opt back in at the same 1.8% that your cold traffic does. That would be 270 more deals. Now, 270 times, you said your average order value was $347. I mean, even right there, Simon, that would drive in an extra $93,000 a month just based off your math. So is there any reason we shouldn't go forward and install this identity resolution tool? And then I'm going to sidebar for a second and say separately, outside of that, that's again how I would package it or talk about the Pixel as an offer standalone, if I was really highlighting that. And then how would I price that? Well, in that type of deal, I've always said, guys, I prefer to go more performance-based deals with the Pixel, where at first, maybe I just slap it on there. I don't even charge anything. Then I show him after a couple of weeks. In this math, let's say we resolve 15,000 a month. So let's say in 2 weeks, we resolved half of that, or 7,500. I might just throw the Pixel on there, charge him a small one-time $500 setup fee to let him know he's serious and cover my hard costs for installing the Pixel. Then go back after 2 weeks and say, hey, Simon, here's 7,500 leads who visited your website. Would you like to buy them back off me and remarket and retarget them in your ads and email campaigns? I'll charge you 25 cents a lead. So even there, let me go back and do the math. right? I can do it in my head. 7,500 leads, 25 cents a piece. Actually, I did mess that up. That's less than I thought, but that would be what, about $1,750 off the top of my head. I should do the math to get it right. At first, the number in my head was 50%. But if we showed him 7,500 leads and sold them back at even 25 cents a lead, yeah, that would be $1,875 account per month. And again, that was only half the month's leads. So if we did it for a full month and sold them back at 25 cents a lead, that would be closer to a $3,750 account per month. Just by slapping the pixel on and simply selling him the leads back. So that's one way you could go about it. You could go about it from a this is the way I've seen it work best. I would almost attack the pixel on performance base from more of my MVP, my mutually beneficial partnership method. Hey, Simon, if I could go in and generate a revenue stream that you don't even have existing right now and get it up to say 50K plus per month, would you kick me back 20% on a performance basis? Right? So you could go in with that amount and $50,000, 20% right now, it's 10K a month. The guy's usually kind of happy to do that because number one, he doesn't know how to resolve the identities of those people and get them back on his calendar and do all that stuff. So just by installing that identity resolution, tracking the people that we retarget in those ads and buy, and then taking a percentage of that revenue stream, that could be a huge monthly account where they're giving you a certain percentage of the business for creating a revenue stream that didn't exist prior to you speaking with them. So that's another way I've seen clients have success with the pixel. I always say, again, I like to let them see the results, get a small one-time setup fee, 500,000 bucks, whatever you think is fair for, again, your pixel costs and the time and the little bit that you're waiting a couple weeks to show results. Go back to them and you can sell it per lead. You could sell it per list, depending on the niche in the industry. You can go back and if you're a full stack agency, you can say, I got this list. If you'd like, I can run all the marketing campaigns, and then you can literally book them per book call that you book for them, a percentage of the deal value. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways you can work on performance deals with the pixel. But I always say at bare minimum, if I don't see like a huge win in this case, the example I just did, I came up with what, like a $93,000 revenue stream. They're not all going to be like that. We know that. If I don't think it's going to be a slam dunk and I'm just selling on retainer where I think, yeah, they're going to make a clear ROI, but I don't see it being a home run, I'm never charging less than $1,500 per month just to slap the pixel on their website and give them all the leads back. So that would be my bare minimum when we talk about pricing personally. But what I'm going to share real quick, and I think I brought this up a week or two ago, and somebody asked if I could send it to them, and I spoke with the client, and they asked me not to share the link with everybody, but I'm going to bring it up and show you guys again. Again, this is just something that a private client rebranded under his own likeness and stuff. So I can't send it out to people without their okay. And he said, Ray, I'd really rather you wouldn't. This is actually exactly what he said to me. He's like, dude, it's the exact pitch deck you already give your clients. I just changed the colors and added in a little flair and changed my pricing. Right. And that's what I'm really going to go over. So in the beginning of the call, I dropped the link with the seller resources. Number 6 on that is the link to the pitch deck that the guy built this whole pitch deck off. So we can go through the pitch deck a little really quickly that this client created, but I'm sure that looks familiar. That's in our pitch deck. If any of you guys have seen it, most of this stuff is he just made it a little more interactive and made it pop a little better with colors that fit his branding, right? But yeah, all these are the same slides that are included in the main pitch deck, in the same case studies and testimonials. He mixed in a couple things like that last one here that was more relevant to his home service industry. Like we don't have this in our pitch deck, right? So he made a couple of edits and changes. But the real thing I want to highlight here is the core pricing. And in the school community, this is a good little overview if you guys haven't already seen in the pitch deck of kind of the math I just ran through. But this you guys can have on your screen and run it through with the client, right? Nice whole numbers, 10,000 visitors. You get a 5% conversion rate. That gets you 500 leads. That means we have 9,500 bounce visitors. Let's say we match 30%. That would come up with about 3,000 leads. Let's say they convert at the same 5% that your conversion rate is. That would be 150 more leads or book calls just based off the traffic you're already sending to your website. So again, that's just a good little, very basic whole math, how we can walk a prospect through why it would be a good fit to use the SuperPixel, our identity resolution tool. But again, the post I made in school, I did like a 1-minute breakdown of exactly this slide. Now, this guy, the one difference I would say to most of you on the call is this guy has our enterprise level package, so he has unlimited audiences. That's really the only difference, and it really doesn't make a difference in the pricing, other than he goes a little lower than I would recommend in a couple of these because he has access to unlimited pixels and audiences because he pays a very hefty monthly premium for that, and he has a lot of clients that he's running this to. But this is just his core pricing here. So let's say they just want an in-market audience and one audience per month. He charges $9.95 a la carte. Now, if they want the audience, he gives unlimited audiences. He knows for his client base, even his big clients don't really pull more than 4 audiences a month. So even unlimited, he knows is probably never going to be more than 4, but it doesn't matter for him anyway. But you guys that don't have unlimited could package this up as just saying multiple audiences and offer 3 or 4 or 5 with the multiple, and then have an add-on for each one above that if needed. He does unlimited audiences plus the ad management. So the reactivation, we get you your data, and then we loop it into your campaigns and run them for you, and we charge you $24.95 a month. So that's his core pricing just on using his lists or his audiences. Then he has core pricing on Pixel, which again, below what I just recommended. If I'm in a normal DaaS program, and the way I sell it personally, I don't sell a pixel to an individual brand owner for less than $1,500 a month. Can you go lower if there's margins? In this case, with this particular client, it makes sense why he's doing it, and it gets a foot in the door. So I get it. I still wouldn't personally, but it makes sense to me, and I get why he would. But again, really, really quickly, column 3, the first blue column, pixel standalone per month. You just want to run it and me give you the data, $7.95. The pixel, and you want me to run the reactivation in, I charge $14.95. Now, if you take column 2 of both of his products, right, the audience plus and the pixel plus, if somebody wants to loop that all in, that comes out to about $4,000. He does it for a total of about $3,495 and gives them about a $500 discount if they want the full stack kind of everything package. So again, I think this is a great example of good core pricing. I've always said bare minimum, I would never go less than $750 per audience. And in many niches, I would recommend more. I'm just saying bare bones minimum to make a profit in any DaaS package. I would never pull a list and sell it for less than $750. That's just my bottom barrel wholesale pricing if I'm a DaaS agency. Shouldn't even say wholesale. My bottom of the barrel kind of a la carte. They just want to buy a list or two here and there. He does it for $9.95. So he goes a little above my bare price there. He goes below it on his pixel. And you can see at the bottom, he has a one-time setup fee on any one of his packages of $9.95. I usually recommend a one-time setup fee of somewhere between $500 and $1,000 when you first enroll a client to cover all the costs with onboarding, getting them set up, the time out of your day, and however many kind of lists they're going to be pulling that first month. It's going to help into the cost. And there's time or resources involved with enrolling a new client. So there's usually a one-time setup fee of somewhere between $500 and $1,000 that I recommend. You've probably seen them on almost every one of our offers, and almost every one of our clients does that as well. So yeah, I think that's just a really, really good example of the basic core pricing of the basic, most utilized and most sold features on the platform. By far, it's in-market audiences and pixels or some combination thereof. So I think that's a good little overview, guys, there on talking a little about how to pitch it, right? How to discuss it, how to package it, how to price it. And then I guess the one thing I'll say before I go into questions and check the chat real quick, also how to pitch it. One thing I've always said is I like to customize the pitch specific to each product, each prospect. So whether I'm selling this offer that's on my screen right now for, this particular DaaS client and his Core 360 brand, when I'm going to pitch this to somebody, I might have 8 sales calls on my calendar that day for the exact same offer and showing the same slide when I get to pricing, but I still might pitch it 8 different ways. And what I mean by that is I'm going to customize it to really what was problem 1 or 2 in their business. So if it had to do with a lot of traffic and a lot of bounce visitors, I'm going to really hammer in the pixel in my pitch and maybe gloss over and talk a little bit about the audiences in the in-market stuff, or vice versa. If they're not driving a lot of traffic and they're mostly running ad spend and email and driving people to a landing page. And again, it's small amounts of traffic and the pixel doesn't make sense, or they're spending a lot in ad spend and I see a quick win. And they really got jazzed up when we talked about cost per lead and acquisition. When I pitch, that's going to be my highlight. And I'm going to lead, and almost everything I share is going to be about that. And then I might hover over and say how the pixel might be a winner later, or how we might add this on, or this is another thing we can do, but I'm going to really customize the pitch to what's going to solve problem 1 or 2 for that business owner. That's what they're going to pay for. They don't really care if we can solve problem 3, 4, 5, 6 on their list. They want problem 1 and or, I mean, I would like to say problem 1, but problem 1 and or 2. If we can show them a clear path to solve that, that's going to be they're going to be much more likely to making a decision and investing in their business to solve said problem than they would be to solve problem, again, 4, 5, 6 on their list or what have you. So I'm going to check the chat one more time. Yeah, I know he does. He undercharges for sure, especially for what he has access to, but that's why he can go in a little cheaper. And he does work. I understand. I think with anything, guys, and just like reacting to Rohit's comment there, I think with anything, we need to be kind of malleable and let the market dictate. So he works with a lot of small mom and pop, I wouldn't even say mid-size, a lot of smaller size service-based companies. So he kind of knows their budget before the call. And if he can get something in for under $3,500 that solves all their problems, he usually knows it's going to be a winner. And then if he has some a la carte things for under $1,000, he can usually at least get somebody to make the leap to start with one product. So yeah, Ro, you're right. He is undercharging, but it's really the market that's kind of dictated that pricing and showed us our sweet spot. And he still has great margins for the program he's in. So it works. I think in most cases, if you're dealing with more established businesses, other niches and industries, yeah, that's very low pricing for a lot of that. I would fully agree. We had Garrett on a couple months ago who sells lists directly to private injury attorneys, talking about how he charges $2,000 per list, and he feel like he's shooting himself in the foot, and he could have charged way more, but now he got him locked into that price, and that's what they're used to paying. He said most common they're getting about a $60K return off every 2,000 list, sometimes higher, but he said that's almost bare minimum. So he's like, knowing that each list is worth 60K on their back end, I probably could have charged way the F more. You know what I mean? But he didn't know till after he started doing it. And guys, 2,000 per list is actually a really good profit price for what any of the DaaS packages pay. So it's really nothing to shake a stick at, for lack of a better phrase. But I thought it was funny when he came back, like he was all stoked about this account. And to my point, they were buying 4 lists off him a month. So now $2,000 per list, 4 per month. They're buying 8 lists off him a month. 8,000 worth of lists per month. So he's happy. That's a very good account that more than covers his cost into our program, never mind his other clients and stuff. So it's still great for him. But I just thought it was funny when he came on and shared that. He was kind of smiling or grinning a little when he was sharing with us. And he's like, man, I really feel like I kind of shot myself in the foot given that pricing. And I chuckled because there's other people on the call that were specifically asking me if charging $750 per list was too high. And then you got this guy saying he's charging $2,000 and thinking he's charging way too low. And there's a lot of fluctuation, right? That was personal injury attorneys, Bobby. Personal injury attorneys specifically was that client I was just mentioning. Yeah, cool. So we got 2 or 3 minutes left here. I don't see any ones in the chat. Let me open it up one more time. Any questions, or if anybody just wants to give any takeaways or what they picked up and they're going to implement, just type a 1 in the chat if you want me to call on you and you want to share anything or ask any questions. I'll leave it for a minute and see if anybody wants to chime in and collaborate. What would be the most you would sell a Pixel for? So you're talking just a base monthly retainer with no performance? I would really have to know the metrics of it, but I don't feel right about charging more than double what I would charge my base for anything. So again, the lowest would be 1,500. I wouldn't feel right ever charging more than 3,000, even if I know I could. Personally, I just wouldn't if I knew it was going to be a more lucrative deal, and I would go into a performance model where they would pay me more and happily pay for an actual end result. So again, I usually only recommend selling on that monthly retainer type of pricing. If I've run the numbers and I see an ROI, but it's not a home run. I don't see it driving in 40, 50, $100,000. You know what I'm saying? And I think they'll make 6,000 or 8,000 back. They'll be happy to pay me 1,500, right? I think that's a really fair deal. Now, if I see more of a home run deal, I'm not even going to pitch the monthly retainer. I'm going to go in, I'm going to install it on his website for free. I'm going to get a one-time small setup fee and a commitment on a proof of concept trial basis. And then I'm going to go show him what I gather up, and I'm going to sell the leads or the list back to him at more than I would have charged at that $1,500 a month retainer. So hopefully that answers your question. But personally, I just never feel right, even if I know I can charge more, charging more than 2x what my base value would be. And I don't even know if I've ever done that, to be honest. It's just I'm pretty ethical of a salesman. I don't feel right just charging more because I can. I feel right charging because that's what the value dictates, and they're still going to get a clear win and ROI off that. You know what I mean? What would you pitch for roofers and natural health niche? Pixel or in market? So again, depends on how established. Roofers, usually the Pixel only makes sense if it's kind of a regional place that has multiple locations. The guy has multiple shops, multiple crews out there. Usually if I'm dealing with like a one-man shop, in-market audiences aren't going to do too much because he's not running much with ads. What I would recommend is, again, Georgette, it's a great question, but I really need to know their process. So when I'm speaking with said roofer, hey, how are you currently getting clients and how does your sales team close deals? If they go out there and door knock, I would actually recommend building them an in-market list in that capacity, not in the ad sense. So again, I would really have to know what their internal kind of infrastructure was and how they're currently closing. Do they have a sales guy? Is it the business owner? Is it in-person demos? Are they door knocking for interest? Are they hanging flyers? Are they running ads? All of that would really play into my answer there, which is why I've said over and over, guys, I feel like the discovery or the gathering intel portion of a sales call is really the most crucial as to the turnout being what you want it to. So if we've diagnosed where they're at in their business, what's worked for them, what hasn't, what they're doing that works, what they like about that, what doesn't, then we can really diagnose a lot better and customize that pitch to their liking, which really plays into your question there, Georgetta. That would be a lot more situational for each prospect. There's always a way to do it, but I would need to know the particulars for what I would recommend best. Totally. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up for this week. As you guys may or may not know, if you're new, the replay to this will be posted in the private client school later today. Almost every week, I have them up within 2 hours. All of my posts, especially from the replays of this workshop, will go into the sales channel. So when you go into school and you search the different channel hubs within the sales one, this recording will be there if anybody wants to watch it back or check out anything again. Hopefully you guys all pick something up. I feel like we hit on a lot of talking points that I get asked a lot, and hopefully there's at least one thing you could take away from today's call. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday, same time, same place. Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, Simon. Appreciate it, guys.